Okay, I want you to imagine something for a second. Just really picture this. It's late in World War II, and you are a German tank commander. You're inside the cramped steel belly of a Tiger tank, the undisputed king of the battlefield. For years, you've been the apex predator. You know the sound of enemy shells just, well, pinging harmlessly off your armor. It's the sound of being invincible. But then, one freezing day in March, in the absolute ruin of Cologne, you see it. A shape emerges from the rubble. It's an American tank, but it's all wrong. The turret is too big, the gun is impossibly long, and it's got this low, mean-looking profile. And for the first time in a long time, a real, genuine chill runs down your spine.
Das ist kein Sherman. That's not a Sherman. In those four simple words from a veteran gunner who had seen everything, the psychological armor of an entire army started to crack. See, today we're not just going to talk about a new piece of hardware. We're going to dive into the blueprint of how a belief is shattered, how just 20 machines managed to break not just enemy lines, but an enemy's will to fight. And maybe, more importantly, what this story from 1945 can teach us about the beliefs that hold us together or tear us apart, even today.
All right, so to really grasp the sheer shock of that moment in Cologne, you first have to understand the world that German tank crews lived in. They didn't just drive a tank, they were custodians of a living legend. It was called the Tiger, and it was the very symbol of German technological superiority on the battlefield.
Now, these numbers on the screen, they're not just specs. They tell a terrifying story. Look at the effective range. A Tiger could comfortably sit over a mile away, pick out a Sherman, and destroy it. For the Sherman crew to have any chance at all, they had to cover more than a mile of open ground, under fire, just to get close enough for their own gun to maybe work. It was a desperate, often suicidal charge against a predator that was virtually immune to them at normal combat distances.
And that created something way more powerful than just a tactical advantage. It created a mindset, a psychological fortress. These German crews genuinely felt untouchable. As this veteran said, "We were the hunters." And on the flip side, among Allied troops, a genuine condition known as tiger fever set in. A kind of paralyzing fear, where every tank that appeared on the horizon looked like the dreaded Tiger. This myth, this belief in their own invincibility, was honestly a stronger defense than any plate of steel.
But while that legend of the Tiger was growing on the battlefields of Europe, something else was happening, thousands of miles away, in the industrial heartland of America. A secret was being forged in the fires of Detroit. The U.S. Army knew it was dangerously outclassed, and their answer was going to be a massive leap forward, all of it built in absolute secrecy.
And just look at this timeline. It shows you the sheer urgency of it all. The Project T-26 gets started almost as soon as the Tiger threat is understood, and then it's just a flat-out race. By January 1945, the first 20 tanks, now officially named the M26 Pershing, are put on boats to Europe. And get this, they were hidden under massive tarps, disguised as just regular heavy equipment. The secret was everything.
This number, well, it really shows you the incredible scale of that secret. 50,000. Not soldiers, but 50,000 American workers across 22 states were involved in this project. Can you imagine the coordination it took to mobilize an industrial army of that size to create a single product, a Tiger killer, and to do it all while keeping the enemy completely in the dark? It's staggering.
So what was the secret sauce? What made this new tank the thing of nightmares for the Germans? It really boiled down to one thing: the gun. The 90mm M3 was an absolute monster. It could fire a shell at over 2,800 feet per second. That's pure kinetic power. And with its special high-velocity rounds, it wasn't just a threat to the Tiger I. It could punch through the armor of the even more formidable King Tiger. This wasn't just a new gun. This was the tool that was specifically engineered to shatter a myth.
And that brings us right back to where we started, that dusty street corner in Cologne. Because this is where the secret finally gets out, and what has become one of the most famous and, amazingly, one of the only filmed tank duels in history. This is the exact moment the legend of the Tiger died.
So here's the scene. A German Panther tank, a very deadly machine in its own right, has an American tank cornered. The crew peers through their sights, and they see what they assume is just some kind of weird Sherman. At this range, it should be an easy, routine kill. The German commander is confident. He gives the order: fire.
And then, the impossible happens. The Panther's high-velocity shell, a round that should have ripped right through that tank, smacks into the front armor and just screams off into the sky. Imagine the deafening bang of your own gun, followed by confusion. The silence inside that Panther must have been terrifying. Everything they knew about their enemy, about the rules of engagement,
was just proven completely wrong.
3 seconds, it doesn't sound like a long time, but in a tank duel, it's an eternity. And for the American crew inside the Pershing, it was all the time they needed. Their gunner, a man named Clarence Smoyer, calmly lined up his shot. This was the moment of truth.
The Pershing's 90mm shell hits the Panther's turret, and it doesn't bounce. It punches straight through the thick steel like it's made of cardboard. The German tank erupts in a ball of fire and smoke. And the most incredible part? A combat cameraman was right there and caught the whole thing on film. It was undeniable proof. The hunters had just been hunted, and there was video evidence.
But here's the real story. The destruction of that one Panther was just the first shot in a much bigger war. The Pershing's real victory wasn't going to be measured in a tally of destroyed tanks. No, its real victory was a psychological kill shot that would send shockwaves across the entire front line.
And now we get to what is, for me, the most incredible fact in this entire story. The total number of Pershings that were actually in combat at this moment? Look at this. Around 20. Just 20 tanks in all of Europe. It's a statistical rounding error. It's nothing. But the impact they were about to have was immeasurable.
The whispers started almost immediately. Panicked reports started filtering back to German command. Tank crews who once charged forward with absolute arrogance now hesitated. Was that a Sherman, or was it one of them? Every single fight was now a terrifying roll of the dice, and pretty soon, tankers started abandoning their vehicles at higher rates. The most powerful weapon the Pershing had wasn't its gun, it was uncertainty. It was fear of the unknown.
And this really forces us to ask a fundamental question, doesn't it? What's actually more powerful? The inches of rolled steel protecting a tank, or the psychological armor of belief and confidence protecting a soldier's mind? The Pershing didn't just pierce steel, it pierced the very idea of German superiority that had fueled their war machine for years. And once that belief was gone, what was really left?
But the fear of this new super tank was only part of the story. The final, crushing blow to morale was the slow, horrifying realization of the immense industrial power that stood behind it. A power that Germany, by 1945, had absolutely no hope of ever matching.
Just look at this table. This is the cold, hard math of defeat. In the entire war, Germany managed to build about 1,300 Tiger Is. By October of 1945 alone, the United States had already produced over 2,200 Pershings. The German tankers were now facing an enemy that could not only match them in quality, but could bury them in quantity. The war had become a battle of production, and it was a battle they had already lost.
And you don't have to take my word for it. This quote from a captured German tanker after the war, it says everything. For years, their one comfort, their last hope, was their technological edge. The moment they learned that advantage was gone, the will to fight just evaporated. The war, as he says, became hopeless in our minds. The battle was lost in their heads before it was ever lost on the ground.
So in the span of just a few weeks, the roles were completely and utterly reversed. The supreme confidence that had defined the German Panzerwaffe was gone, replaced by a crippling, paralyzing doubt. They went from being the apex predators of the European battlefield to being the prey, constantly wondering if the next tank they saw would be their last.
So, to wrap this all up, what was the Pershing's true victory? It was never about statistics. Its true victory was psychological. It took the foundational belief of an entire fighting force, that myth of their own technological superiority, and it absolutely demolished it. It created a crisis of confidence that spread like wildfire and did far more damage than any 90mm shell ever could.
And that leaves us with a final thought, one that echoes way beyond some battlefield in 1945. We all have core beliefs that keep us going, right? In our jobs, our lives, our relationships, it's our own kind of psychological armor. The story of the Pershing is a powerful, stark reminder of just how fragile that armor can be. It forces us to ask ourselves a pretty deep question. If a belief is the only thing keeping you in the fight, what happens to your will to resist the moment you discover it was a lie all along?